All right. Assalamu alaikum, Fahad.
Walaikum assalam.
Great to have you back
Thanks, man.
on another episode of More from Moose podcast. How many more days left until the election is finished?
Oh, so election day is November 5th.
Okay.
So we've got 6 days left.
6 days.
So it's Tuesday of next week. That's your last chance to cast a ballot.
But technically, we can vote early.
100%, and you definitely should. So I believe the stats right now are saying that 15% of people in New Jersey have already voted by mail.
Wow.
And that's pretty good turnout. And another big chunk of people is voting early. So as of last weekend, you were able to go out and vote early from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay.
on any weekday, and from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday. You can go out and vote. And there are about 7 to 10 locations per county in New Jersey that you can go to. So if you go on the county website, or even just go on Google and you search your county and early voting locations, there's going to be a list of locations, there's going to be addresses, and you can go to any of those locations. You don't have to go to a specific location that's assigned to you. So it's the easiest way to go vote other than voting by mail. So I highly recommend going early. And if you have free time in the middle of the day, or if you're somebody who works from home, go in the middle of the day. Nobody's going to be there. And if somebody is there, it's going to be a really sweet grandma, and she's going to want to talk to you, and it'll be a good time. So just vote early, and vote early in the day or in the middle of the day if you can.
Yeah, I always knew that there was availability to vote early. I just didn't think it was that easy.
They've made it much easier, and vote by mail has also gotten easier. So a lot of these things have become easier since COVID.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that changed during COVID, and most people realize there's some benefits to these things. And so those changes have stayed in place. They just renamed some of those things. I'm going to move this up just so.
Yeah. We're also
see in here.
on Instagram Live in case anyone wants to look at the video back again. I've tagged Fahad so that way people can just watch the conversation besides the YouTube channel or Spotify or Apple Podcasts while I'm listening. But today we're going to go all in. First, I want to understand and see how has it been going for you with this whole process since it's your first time doing this?
Yeah. So, I mean, just the campaign in general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's multiple elements to any political campaign, right? So there's the big picture, right?
Yeah.
Well, are you achieving the goal? So what was the goal of this campaign? Well, I'm running for United States Congress. So the goal is to become a congressman.
Yeah.
How far off is that goal? Well, based on the most recent polls I have, I'm going to get between 12 and 20% of the vote. Now, that's an amazing showing for somebody who's not running as a major party candidate. I'm running as an independent with, a bag of coins, essentially. I haven't been able to fundraise a lot because nobody wants to fund an independent who's running on a platform of common sense. Nonetheless, we're going to have a pretty good showing. But what does that mean for the purpose of this entire thing, right? Am I achieving any sort of goal, or am I just wasting my time? And this is where it becomes important to sort of understand the political system of the United States, right? A third party isn't typically going to get elected, right? Not in a system where we've got two major parties that sort of hoover up all the funding and all the support. What a third party can do is shift the conversation, or what an independent candidate can do is shift the conversation. And so then the question becomes, okay, have we been able to successfully do that? Well, we will see, right? Because until there is an actual outcome of this election, you won't know how relevant my messages have been. And so if we finish out this election at closer to that 20% instead of the 12%, that's a significant message. And it could also flip this district, meaning the district that I'm in is a Democrat +8 district.
Okay.
That means there's 8% more registered Democrats than Republicans, but there's still far more independents in the district.
Okay.
Typically, the Democrat in the district wins by a margin of about 16 percentage points. It's a big margin.
It
right?
is.
But you just heard the numbers I was telling you, right? 12 to 20% might go my way. Okay, so even if it's on the lower end of that, what does that mean for the election? Well, there's also a Republican running.
Yeah.
There's other people running too. They're not very relevant to this election. They haven't really fundraised. They haven't really campaigned. Some of them have good messages, some of these other candidates, but they're not relevant to the total outcome of this election.
Okay.
They might, in aggregate, get 1 or 2%. The Republican, on the other hand, is going to be between the Democrat and the Republican goes the rest of the share, right? And
Yeah.
typically the Republican would have less than the Democrat. But because of the Trump bump that a lot of people are seeing,
Yeah.
you're actually going to see the Republican also get 2 to 4% more. Now, what does that mean for the district? It means that if things work out the way we're thinking, it's quite possible that I'm going to lose. That's okay. You got to lose sometimes. But the beautiful thing is that Frank Pallone, the scumbag congressman who is run by corporate interest and foreign interest, who's been in Congress for 36 years. I used to work for the guy, right? So
Yeah.
I used to have some respect for him. And then I started to understand his background, his policies, and who actually drives his decision-making. And obviously that changed, and that's why I decided to run. But he's going to lose his seat. He spent 36 years in Congress, and we're going to embarrass him because of his positions on some key issues, including the genocide that's taking place right now in the Middle East. And obviously, there's a compromise, right?
Yes.
Republican's going to win. Well, who is this Republican? Sort of a nobody from nowhere. He's never been in politics. His claim to fame is he runs a cheese plant, which is nice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we all like cheese, but is Cheese Man the person we want in Congress in the long run? No, of course not. We want somebody who has expertise in the domains necessary to be able to govern us.
Yeah.
And so, Congress, it's 2-year terms. So maybe he'll be in Congress 2 years. That's fine, because a year from now, we're going to be gearing up for another primary. And a year and a half from now, we're all going to be voting in a primary. And instead of Frank Pallone, Mr. Genocider-in-Chief, or, sidekick to the Genocider-in-Chief,
Yeah.
we're going to have our pick, somebody that we like, somebody who represents us, somebody who's not controlled by foreign interest or corporate interest. And so that is what the success would look like in this election. And I guess we can talk more about it, but a lot of people think that elections are about what goes on today or what goes on next week. It's not. It's about setting yourself up for long-term success. And long-term success means that you have to have influence. And you don't get influence solely by winning. You also get influence by showing your hand and showing how much strength you have and how receptive people are to your message. And you do that by getting a big chunk of the electorate when you go up in an election. And so that's what we're doing. We're laying the groundwork for 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 6 years from now. And there's a good opportunity here to show people that if you do things that are unpopular with the people you represent, those people are going to kick you out of office. And it doesn't matter who wins at that point, right? It just matters who loses.
So basically, it's one big game of chess in the end.
Exactly.
And so even though you have accepted that you're not going to clinch the seat, you are actually planning the long game.
100%. And that's all you can do. In American politics, if you run every race as a one race at a time, you're never going to build influence or strategy. You don't have a strategy. That's just tactics, right? Because long run is strategy, short term is tactics. So tactics, you can win a seat. If I wanted to win a seat, I wouldn't have run for Congress, right? The easy way to win a seat is to run for state senate or to run for state assembly or to run for mayor. Much easier with the amount of money I had to play with to do something like that. But is that a long-term political strategy for somebody that has my background? No. So for those the viewers who know, right, obviously they already know, but I'll bore them with it, right? I started my career at the White House. I spent time at state. I spent time working in Congress. And then I went and worked in finance, right? Not at just any company, but, the company that everyone hates. I was at BlackRock for the bulk of my career. And then I got my fancy Ivy League MBA. And then I wanted to go back into public service. So I did counterintelligence work at the Department of Defense focused on China. And then I did counterintelligence work at the FBI as a special agent. Kick down doors, arrest spies, put them away. And a lot of times I didn't because unfortunately the laws are not keeping up with the amount of espionage activity that's taking place. But the bottom line is I've got the background to be involved in politics at the federal level, not necessarily at the local level. And so this is the seat that made sense for me. And it's also a time and place where it made sense for me to run because what we're seeing is foreign influence is rampant in our political process. And who better to sort of stamp that out than a counterintelligence trained FBI special agent or former FBI special agent?
I mean, I've seen what they did with a TikTok ban, and they're talking, and they had a hearing in Capitol Hill over foreign interests and China, this and that. I didn't really pay attention, to be honest, but I got the gist of it that we don't want a foreign government trying to influence companies, this and that, lobbyists, whatsoever. But then when I hear that even though AIPAC and CPAC lobby for the benefit of the state of Israel. I don't understand why, and I don't understand why we have to come to rescue to country, even though, for example, Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
Like they call it a proxy war.
Yeah.
We're not really in it, but we're providing the weapons through what they call aid.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I thought aid was, hey, here's some money for food
Yeah.
and maybe for defenses.
Yeah. Here's a piece of bread.
Yeah, but instead it's weapons. And who wields the most weapons? Russia and America.
Yeah.
From what I learned, I went through the rabbit hole and deep dive, and I was just blown away. And I guess a little bit of my innocence left with that too.
Yeah.
Because in the end, we're a money-making machine, the U.S. government.
Yep.
Right? So if you can speak to that, how is that fair with the TikTok ban and foreign entity, but then when it comes to lobbyists who work for AIPAC and CPAC giving money for government officials to vote for sending aid to Israel,
Yep.
when we can just keep that money here to help us?
Yep.
Because technically it's our money paying taxes.
It is your money.
Yeah. Why can't we do that to help with infrastructure, help with feeding the poor, help with education? So can you explain to me, like, why isn't it the same and how come it's different?
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but when you think about this question, you sort of have to peel back the onion a little bit and think about who actually has influence over your government.
Yeah.
And whether your government is actually your government or whether it has been captured by people with money, right? Whether that's corporate interest or foreign interest, because there's money in politics in the United States and because there's unlimited money in politics in the United States, the people with money are the people who get to influence your government.
Huh.
There's another issue. People with money who don't live in the United States but have some sort of nominal connection to the United States, meaning they're a resident, they have legal permanent resident status, or maybe they're a citizen but they're a dual citizen, they still have the ability to get involved in American politics financially. So even people who can't vote in American politics can donate to American political campaigns, and they can donate to political action committees.
Interesting. So they can influence with money even if they're not even a citizen.
Even if they don't have the right to vote, they can influence politics more so than somebody who does have the right to vote. Because one vote, it's just your vote. It's not going to have, it's going to have an impact, right? Obviously, but it's not going to have an exponential impact. Now, $5, that's a yard sign, right? How many people see a yard sign? Hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe if 10% of that 100 decide to vote for a person based on a yard sign, there you go, 10 votes for $5. So $5 could have more of an impact on an election than one vote. And now you're talking not $5, you're talking about billions of dollars that are coming in to U.S. elections. And even in my district, if you just look at the incumbent who I'm running against over the course of his 36 years in Congress, he has taken millions and millions of dollars, multiple millions of dollars from foreign lobbies, from lobbies that are structured to provide advocacy for a foreign government and the needs of that foreign government. So functionally, it's very similar to a foreign agent. But because of the way our laws are written, these organizations are not registered as foreign agents. So they do the bidding of a foreign government, but they do so under the guise of being American entities. This is very tricky. This is a loophole. And as a result of this, you see a lot of foreign money, right? Money from people who are dual nationals, people who don't live in the United States. Or people who live in the United States but don't have United States citizenship. That money is going into these organizations. And then those organizations are funneling that money to U.S. politicians. And being involved in politics, I can tell you, you can't get elected without money. An ad buy costs thousands of dollars, right? If I want to go up on all the billboards in my district, it's going to cost me $10,000. I mean, that's a great price. That's better than any price that anyone else has paid, but it's expensive. And so if you want to be politically relevant, you need to have money. In order to have money, you need to make friends with these lobbyists. And these lobbyists, their interests are often not the same interests as the average American. And that's why you end up in this scenario where these things don't make sense, right? Why are we sending so much money overseas? Why are we taking our hard-earned money and sending it to go kill people who we have nothing to do with, right? Whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in the Palestinian territories, whether it's anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Why do we have skin in this game? We don't. We actually look bad when we get involved in these. Right? I mean, I talk about this in my book, America's Future Wars, right?
Yeah.
The Ukraine conflict is not smart. Meaning, in terms of our position in the Ukraine conflict, it's not a smart thing for us to get involved in. Why? Because Ukraine historically was the capital of the Kievan Rus, right? The Russian Empire, it began in Ukraine.
Oh,
So,
didn't know that.
yeah, ethnically, historically, all of this, there's a connection there, right? It's not a connection that you can sever just by saying that now Ukraine is part of the West. Like, that's not how this works. It's more complicated than that. And going beyond that, you have to also think about what is the end game, right? If Ukraine fights Russia, does Ukraine win by itself? Of course not.
Yeah.
And Ukraine does not have the capacity, the manpower, the ability to produce weapons to fight Russia. So then what happens? It has to become a war in which other people are involved. But what is our stake in this? How do we benefit? We don't.
Yeah.
Right? Other than what you talked about, there's certain companies within the defense apparatus, the companies that are defense contractors, that are weapons manufacturers, who benefit anytime there's a war. They make money off of people dying. And those companies are on the corporate side of this whole thing, right? So we talked about foreign influence. You've got APAC.
Yeah.
But then you've got corporate influence. You've got defense contractors. You've got companies that have relationships with the Department of Defense who hire 3-star generals as soon as they retire, right? There's this back and forth. There's a revolving door between these defense industry lobbies and these foreign lobbies and U.S. government officials. And as a result of this, what you end up with is a system where money has all the power. And so whatever is good for these people's bottom lines is what ends up happening, and your taxpayer dollars end up funding this nonsense.
So let's talk about now a touchy subject. A lot of listeners, they are born here, or they're raised here as well. And they want to understand this whole Palestine-Israel thing. Ever since I was a kid, I've always seen the same response. Israel has a right to defend themselves. I mean, like any country, they have a right to defend themselves. But then when it gets down to the nitty gritty, it's a quote like Omar Salman, the imam in Texas. He said that you don't bomb a school just to get the shooter, all right? It has to be tactical. And in this instance, they're just carpet bombing everything. I know they have the best technology in the world. And from what I was told through social media and obviously like looking into it, they have people who were part of the government there who can say that, yeah, we have technology. We can hear people's houses from like a long distance, which is crazy. We can even see people, heat vision, whatsoever, things that are in video games, to be honest. So I'm just wondering, like, what do we do? Is this technically illegal for what they're doing? And how come the rest of the world, including the courts in South Africa, rule it a genocide except for us? And how come now we don't take it seriously, but if it came to, for example, like Ukraine, we would be all for it?
Well, it has to do with that influence piece. But so let me walk this through different topics that you touched on, right? So one is about the technology and why is the Zionist entity doing what it's doing, right? I don't even like calling them Israel. You know why? Because if you look at the Hebrew etymology of what Israel means, it means the pure servant of God.
Okay.
Israel. El is like Allah, God. Okay. I mean, these people, the way that they're conducting themselves, whether you agree with them or not, this is not the way a pure servant of God would conduct himself. That's very clear.
Yeah.
But here's the issue. First, you have to unpack why do they do what they do and why do they believe what they believe. So you have to look at the belief system, right? So, for example, I'm a Muslim. In my religion, I'm not allowed to kill civilians. Right? That is forbidden in my religion. I'm only allowed, if I'm going to go to war with somebody, it's got to be people who are combatants, men. Men fight men. That is war in the Islamic context. Now, the issue is in Talmudic law, right? So there's two primary sources of law in Judaism. There's the Torah, right, which is also known as the Bible, the Old Testament.
Yes.
And there is the Talmud. The Talmud is the rabbinical commentary on the Jewish law, essentially. Okay.
So basically, like a summarization.
No, it's more than that. It's you know how in Islamic law there is the books of fiqh.
Yes.
Right, like the details on the rulings, and you sort of flesh out the sources. Same thing. The Talmud is that, right? It's the details of how you're supposed to act in the Jewish faith.
Yeah.
And the issue is that there are verses from the Old Testament that justify the killing of not just combatants, but civilians. And then the Talmudic interpretation of this allows the Jewish people to exterminate an entire population if they are non-Jews. So there is a belief within Judaism that a non-Jew is subhuman.
Yeah.
Like there's a different category of creature.
Yeah.
And so for them, there isn't the same mindset, right? It's not like we're looking at it from the humanist perspective or the secular perspective. Okay, we all have dignity as humans and we must protect that human dignity. It's not like that. They're looking at it from a theological perspective.
Yeah.
And it's a warped theology. It's a theology that's telling them that they are justified in killing babies as long as those babies are non-Jews. And so that's the reason I'm telling you this is because that's the foundation of what comes next. So why aren't they using targeted weapons?
Yeah.
Why aren't they using precision technology? Why aren't they sending snipers out to kill these people that they claim are terrorists?
Yeah.
Right? Why are they killing an entire apartment block's worth of people?
Exactly.
Well, two reasons. One is it costs a lot of money to use a precision weapon versus a dumb weapon. So a big 1,000-pound bomb will cost less than a precision drone that's going to go in and kill one person by like a factor of 30. Right? It's a lot more expensive. They don't want to waste money. They don't have money to waste. As you see, their economy is in the dumps.
Yeah.
And all the money they get is from us. And at a certain point, we're going to run out of money to give them.
Yeah.
So that's a piece of it, right? It's more expensive to use precision weaponry. And that's why they're not using it. The second way that you could have a precision conflict instead of a broad conflict is by sending in soldiers, infantry, or special forces.
Yeah.
And so this would be considered like close quarters combat, right? CQB.
Yeah.
This is something that I'm trained in. As a FBI special agent, you get trained in close quarters combat. You spend time with rubber bullets and guns and all the other fun stuff.
Yeah.
And you go around little fake buildings in a place called Hogan's Alley at Quantico.
Yeah.
And you practice fighting people in a way that prevents harm to the surrounding environment. So you prevent harm not only to the people around you, but even to the property around you.
Yeah.
Meaning at the end of these scenarios, you will have a bad guy either in handcuffs or in a body bag, and he will be the only one who was harmed. Everybody else comes out unscathed, and even the property comes out unscathed because you don't want bullets flying through walls, right? You don't know who's on the other side of that.
That's right.
That's how precision warfare or precision battle is done. And I'm not going to comment on whether it was a good war or a bad war, but when we were involved in wars in other countries, for example, like Iraq, a lot of the warfare that we were conducting was considered this type of warfare, close quarters combat warfare. And despite that, still many civilians were killed, and it was still an unjust war, right? So I'll say that much about that. But the thing that we're focused on here is why is Israel not doing that? Well, because if you engage in close quarters combat, guess what happens? You have to put your own men on the line. Your people are going to get shot at. Your people might die. And of course, if you view the people that you're killing or the people that you're up against as all subhuman, whether they're kids, grandmas, grandpas, whoever, and you all are special people, right? You're Jews. You're human.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to put a Jewish life on the line to save one life of what they call the Amalek, right?
Yeah. And they've said this.
Yeah, this is not me saying this. This is their finance minister. This is their interior minister. This is their defense minister. This is multiple people in the chain of command in their military.
Yeah.
This is their worldview. And then if you want to talk about the theological piece that I was talking about, you've got people that understand Jewish law, people like Rabbi Mizrahi in New York. He's upstate New York. This guy.
Yeah.
He's one of the biggest cheerleaders for genocide. He's telling these people, it's like, look, this is allowed. We don't care what international law says. We don't care what U.S. law says.
Yeah.
Nonsense. We follow Jewish law. And Jewish law says that Israel is ours. Israel goes from the Nile River to the Euphrates, and everything in between is ours. If anyone wants to occupy that land, it's Jewish land, we can kill them all. Or we can enslave them. That's their view, right? They say, look, okay, you don't want to die, no problem. You can be our slaves. But that is the position they hold for any non-Jew that is in these lands.
And to be clear, those are like the ultra-right conservative people of the government there.
No, it's not. So this is something that the U.S. media has been doing a lot of to sort of make it look like this is Netanyahu and his crazy people that believe in this.
Yeah.
This is the foundation of what Israel is. Israel was built upon this idea that it is going to be an entity that takes land that is not owned by the people that are going to take over that land, right? These people are going to come from a foreign country.
Yeah.
They're going to colonize this land. They're going to take over this land, and they're going to expel the people that indigenously lived there. So that is what the Israeli project was from the get-go. So if you look at this history, it's not like this started last year. This started generations ago. So over 100 years ago, the Zionist movement began.
Yeah.
And Jews from Europe started migrating to Israel with the help of the British government.
Yes.
And this was all before World War II. So there's other people who make the argument that Israel is a necessary response to what happened during the Holocaust. No, this project, the Zionist project, started way before the Holocaust.
Okay.
And so these people from Europe came into Palestine and they started causing chaos. So, you know, a lot of people think that suicide bombings and terrorism and all of this is some Islamic thing.
Yeah.
It's not. You know, the first people that were doing suicide bombings, at least in that part of the world, it was these people. It was the one of the organizations called the Haganah. There's other organizations. These were Jewish terrorist organizations. They came in, they caused chaos, and because of the chaos they caused, they were able to get, essentially they were able to extract rights from the British colonial overlords that were there at the time.
Yeah.
And so they were able to get more and more influence during that time. And they set themselves up so then when the British left, when they decolonized the area, that these terrorist organizations were then able to go and terrorize the general population of the area. And that was what was known as the first Nakba, right? Where the terrorist organizations, the Jewish terrorist organizations, went out and they expelled the Palestinians from their homes. They killed many of them. They raped many of them. They sent them to different countries, or they chased them out. Either you were chased out, you were killed, or you were raped. And that was it.
Prior to that,
Yeah.
they were just living in harmony.
So this was, so look, there's also different groups of Jews that live in Palestine now, right? So there was, historically, the only Jews that were in the Arab world were like ethnic Arab Jews or Sephardi Jews, meaning Jews that came from Spain. So after the reconquest of Spain, right, when they expelled all the Jews and the Muslims or forced them to convert.
Yeah.
Those Jews ended up in North Africa and they spread out across the Muslim world.
Okay.
But then there's also indigenous Jews to the Arab world, like Yemeni Jews. And then there's also a lot of Persian Jews who lived in Iran historically.
Yes.
Those people and the Arabs and the Muslims always got along, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there was, in any scenario, I'm sure you can find an individual instance where there might have been something negative. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the general arc of 1,200 years of history where there was Muslim rulers in that region of the world.
Yeah.
The Jews and the Muslims and the Christians all got along.
Yeah.
Everyone had their rights. And in the Ottoman Empire, there was this thing called a millet system where each religious group had its own courts and it had its own part of town. So if you were in, say, Constantinople or Istanbul, and you were a Jewish merchant, you didn't follow Islamic law if you were doing trade with just Jews. You would follow Jewish law.
Yeah.
And if you had a dispute, you could take it to Jewish court.
Okay.
And your Jewish court would rule based on Jewish law.
Okay.
And same thing's true for a Christian. So if you're a Christian and you want to sell alcohol, you're allowed to do that to other Christians
Yeah.
in this millet system. And you are ruled solely by your own law. The only time where Islamic law would become relevant was if it was a transaction between a Muslim and a Jew, or between a Muslim and a Christian, because obviously that was the law of the land.
Yeah.
So anytime there was an intersection between different faiths, then the Islamic law would hold, would be the one that would be upheld. And the same thing was true for social law. As long as you were in the Jewish quarter or the Christian quarter, you lived the way Jews and Christians wanted to live.
Yeah.
It's only when you were in the general part of the city, the Islamic part of the city, which was, of course, the majority, you would follow Islamic law. And so that is the framework of how Jews, Christians, and Muslims live in an Islamic society.
Okay.
Now, obviously, the framework of Zionism is very different because, first of all, the Jews that are Zionist Jews are not indigenous Arab Jews or Persian Jews or Sephardi Jews. They're Ashkenazi Jews.
Okay.
So what does that mean? It means that they are the Jews from Europe.
Okay.
But what else does that mean? What is the lineage of European Jews, right? Where did they come from?
Yeah.
So historically, in order to be considered a Jew, right, this is based on Jewish law, you have to be a descendant of the prophetic lineage of Ibrahim alayhi salam or Musa alayhi salam, or through the other prophets, being Harun alayhi salam. So Abraham, Aaron, or Israel, meaning the Isaac. Right?
Which, quick note, I want to let everyone know that in Islam, we believe in all the holy books before they were changed, which most people don't even know. So we believe in all the prophets too. So,
Yeah.
but back to what you were saying.
Yeah, so essentially, in order to be considered a Jew, right? And this is based on, again, the scholars of Judaism, right? Like
Yeah.
the people who will tell you what is a Jew, what is not a Jew, what is Judaism, what is not Judaism. These people will tell you that in order to be considered a Jew, this is the uncontroversial, meaning like in order to be clearly a Jew,
Yeah.
you need to be somebody who descends from this lineage.
Yeah.
You need to be from the children of Isaac.
Yeah.
Peace be upon it.
Peace be upon him.
And so so why is that relevant? Because the Ashkenazi Jews, they don't have lineage tracing back to they're not considered the children of Israel. They don't descend from one of the prophetic lineages. They are actually a group of people who, before migrating to Europe, were a Turkic tribe known as the Khazars. And they were not Jews. They followed some other religions, and then they converted to Judaism somewhere around 800 years ago.
Okay.
So this is controversial. Why? Because to enter Judaism by conversion, it's not even clear if that's allowed or not. Meaning, if you want to convert to Judaism, most of the people of knowledge within Judaism will say you can't.
Yeah.
You have to be a person of Jewish lineage. Okay, so first there's controversy on whether Jews even consider these people Jews. Okay, like the people of knowledge. I'm not talking about the average person. Nobody cares what the average person thinks. You have to be a person who studied the books of your law in order to be considered an authority on it. The same way that you're not going to take advice on constitutional law from the guy selling ice cream on the corner, right?
Yeah.
Unless, I mean, if he's a constitutional law scholar, sure, but most of the time you're going to go to the Supreme Court, or you're going to go to somebody who's teaching constitutional law at a serious institution like Harvard or Yale. The same thing applies when it comes to religious law. You have to talk to the people who have studied it, who know it, who have chains that prove that these people have gotten this knowledge from other people who have this knowledge and understand it. And so based on what those people say, these people are not considered Jews.
Yeah.
Or even if they are, it's controversial whether they're considered Jews. So that's piece one.
Yeah.
They're definitely not Semites, right? So that's another piece of this, right? So they're from Turkestan, or they're from Central Asia, okay? They're Turks. That's a very small lineage because they all intermarried with Europeans and they became mostly European. So they're Euro-Turkic people who moved to the Israeli, what they call Israel, but it's the Palestinian territories.
Yeah.
And now they've been there for 50, 60, 100 years.
Yeah.
That's their claim to this land.
Okay.
And then obviously the broader claim that they say is that this land was promised to them by the Bible or by the Torah.
Yeah.
What do I care?
Yeah.
It's your law. I don't follow your law. Your book is abrogated. I follow the Quran.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, that's not an evidence, right? If you come to me with an evidence saying that because Jewish law says that this is my land, I'm going to, okay. I couldn't care less what Jewish law says. Is the United Nations a Jewish organization? Are all these international bodies Jewish organizations? Is the United States a Jewish organization? No. Yeah. We live in a secular world. Yep. And in a secular world, you need to have proofs, empirical proofs or logical proofs as to why this land is yours. They don't have empirical proofs and they don't have logical proofs. They have scriptural proofs from a script that I'm saying is not, that's an abrogated script. It's a script that we disagree with. It's a script that can be empirically and logically disproven.
So it's basically they're ruling theologically.
They're trying to, right? But I'm saying, like, even based on that theological ruling, they are not the inheritors of that land to begin with. And actually, and this is why so there's different Jews that will say different things about this, right? So there's groups of Jews, religious Jews, who are considered Orthodox, who will say the land of Israel, the only person who can open that land back up for the Jews or take it back for the Jews is the Messiah.
Okay.
So they say that this is illegitimate. This is rebellion against God's law.
Okay.
So even within the Jewish community, there are a lot. I mean, obviously, some of the greatest anti-Zionists are Jews.
Yeah.
People don't like to talk about this, but okay, there's three candidates for president right now that people know about, right? There's Kamala Harris, there's Donald Trump, and there's Jill Stein.
Yeah.
How many of them are Jewish?
One.
What's her position on what Israel is doing right now?
She's Green Party, so she is totally against what's going on there.
She calls it a genocide. She says there is proof for this being a genocide, and she is against that genocide. That is her worldview. Yeah. She's a Jew. She grew up a Jew. She grew up in a family that understood the cost of the Holocaust. These are these opinions that exist within the Jewish community, whether it's someone like Jill Stein, who's a secular Jew, or somebody who's a religious Jew, like an Orthodox Jew. Across the spectrum, Zionism is not something that's bought into. Yeah. And again, that's one piece of it, right? That's the social piece of it. But then there's also the theological and scriptural piece of it, where there is a disagreement on whether anyone other than the Messiah can take back the land of Israel.
Yeah.
By the way, we agree. Like as Muslims, we also say that the Messiah is going to come and he is going to rule from Quds, meaning Jerusalem. He's going to rule from them.
Yeah.
So we're saying the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
What we're saying is wait for the Messiah, bro.
Yeah.
Why do you think that you're the Messiah? You guys are like, don't be a nut job and think that God has appointed you to be something special.
Yeah.
We will know when the Messiah comes, because the Messiah, we believe, is going to be Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, peace be upon him. We believe he is going to return.
Yeah.
God is going to bring him back to earth, and that it's going to be Jesus' army that takes back Jerusalem from the army of the Antichrist.
So that was really good, quick, in a nutshell, a whole religious aspect of it. So to bring it back in, you're basically saying that it's a radical point of view of how they're ruling that area.
Not only is it radical, but it's controversial within the Jewish theological apparatus.
Yeah.
And it's not even agreed upon. And the people that actually, this is important. You know what Theodore Herzl is?
No.
He's the scumbag that came up with the idea of Zionism. He was an atheist.
Okay.
He was, culturally, he was Jewish. He was a Russian Jew.
Okay.
So from the Khazar. So culturally, I'm not even saying ethnically, because ethnically, he was a Turk and a Russian.
Yeah.
He came up with this idea of Zionism because he thought it would be good for the Jews of Europe to have their own place. Because Europeans were so mean to these people.
Yeah. All right. That's a good history lesson. We don't have much time left, but I do want to touch base on why the whole world thinks that and ruled that it's a genocide, and yet we, as one of the sheriffs of the world, we can't just say, yes, we agree. And also when it comes to so many things that's been shot on people's phones, cameras over there, which is clearly, I mean, there's always two sides, but still, like, there's a lot of innocent lives being lost. Why does it, whenever reporters ask during the briefings, they just say, we have the IDF investigate? That's like the default response. And as someone who's been on the other side, who can see the investigation and everything, what should I have some faith in our U.S. government putting pressure on the investigation for them to stop? Because it's been going on for a whole year now.
No, so let's break this down into pieces, right? So there is, how much time do you think we have?
Like 10
minutes? All right, I'll try to keep it to 10 minutes, but there's a lot of content here, right? So just, we might do a follow-up conversation, I think.
Of course. Yeah, no, we're going to have more than
Yeah.
a second, third, maybe fourth podcast. So
let's open it up with what law matters, right? So
Yeah.
that's important. So you mentioned international bodies have said that Israel is possibly conducting a genocide. Others have said that it is conducting a genocide. Okay, do we care about international law in the U.S.? Yes, no, right? But let's say let's just dismiss it, right? Who cares about international law?
okay.
And actually, let me point out, just for fun, the interesting hypocrisy of the Israelis here, right? Again, the Zionist entity. We shouldn't call them Israelis, but I always forget. They reject international law, and they say all these institutions are bupkis, right?
Yeah, like UN, UNRWA.
All these things, right?
Yeah.
But where do they get their legitimacy from? What do they claim? Why do they claim that they have a right to that land in the secular sense? Because the UN passed a resolution allowing them to occupy part of that land.
Yeah.
So they use the UN when it suits them, and then they reject the UN and all the international bodies that come out of that UN
Yeah.
when it doesn't suit them. So there's a lot of hypocrisy there. But anyway,
Yeah.
so international law, let's just all agree that it's nonsense. It's made up.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's focus on U.S. law, right? We're Americans. We care about U.S. law. So is genocide against U.S. law? I'm quiz. Anyone in the chat know anything about this?
I would hope so, but I'm pretty sure 99.9%.
Yes, you got it right, because you know the law. And it is. So Title 18 is one of the U.S. Criminal Code titles. It's the code that the FBI and the Department of Justice are responsible for enforcing.
Okay.
And so Title 18, subsection 1091, is about genocide.
Okay.
So genocide is against U.S. law, okay? And then there's two types of laws. Okay, now we've established that we care about U.S. law, and we've established that genocide is something that is punishable by U.S. law.
Yes.
Okay. But then, is the genocide taking place in the U.S.? No, it's
no.
taking place overseas.
Yes.
So, okay, do we have jurisdiction? That's another question. Well, most of the time, if there's U.S. law, and typically it would apply to just the U.S. and U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? There's some laws that are so special and so important that they are considered extraterritorial laws. They are laws that we will enforce anywhere in the world. So terrorism is one example, right? Terrorism is an extraterritorial. Terrorism laws are typically extraterritorial laws. We will prosecute people for terrorism that they commit overseas.
Okay.
Now, the same thing is true for genocide. Genocide is extraterritorial.
Okay.
And because of that, if a U.S. national or a U.S. citizen does anything that is listed in the genocide, I mean, it commits a genocide based on the things I'm going to talk about,
Yeah.
then that person can and should be prosecuted in a U.S. court. And the same is true if somebody commits a genocide against a U.S. person anywhere in the world. So if you genocide Americans, or if you are an American trying to commit a genocide,
Yeah.
we will prosecute you.
Okay.
Now, this is where we could talk about, okay, who are the people, who are the players in this, and why is this relevant to what's going on in Palestine? Well, many of the members of the Israeli government are either U.S. nationals, U.S. dual citizens.
Okay.
And so, yes, they are considered covered under this law. And then many of the people being killed are U.S. nationals or U.S. citizens. So those people are also covered under this law. And then there's a lot of people in the Israeli occupation forces who are American, dual citizens, who eagerly went to commit this genocide. And they left America to go and participate in this genocide. It's all of them are also covered under this law. So U.S. law is not going to be something used to indict Israel as an entity. It's going to indict individuals that are perpetrating this genocide in Israel. Okay, so that's also important to remember. So now we can come up with a list of people who are potentially culpable of committing genocide, right? So we've got maybe we've got the finance minister, right? Real scumbag. We've got the defense minister, and we've got the interior minister. Those people are very clearly, so let me pause here and give you the pieces of proving this, right?
Yeah.
And actually, before I even talk about proving it, we don't need to prove it, because in order to open an investigation in the United States, so for the FBI, or in this case, the Department of Justice's special unit on human rights prosecutions,
Yes.
all you need is reasonable suspicion in order to open an investigation. And before opening an investigation, you can already start digging. You can do what's called assess the situation. So you've got plenty of information for opening an assessment. And then what is reasonable suspicion? Well, you just need some sort of credible source telling you that there might be something happening here. Do we have credible sources telling us that there might be something happening here that looks like genocide? Yeah, we've got the Israeli government, we've got members of the Israeli military, we've got international institutions, and even if we don't care about what their rulings are, we can care about whether they're a legitimate institution that would have done the necessary digging to come up with a reasonable suspicion standard. They have probably achieved way more than that. They probably have a probable cause standard.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's say we've got at least reasonable suspicions. The first step would be to open an investigation if we have reasonable suspicion that, with intent, somebody that is covered under this law is killing members of a group, and they have the intent to destroy that group either in whole or in part. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't matter whether that's during a time of war or during a time of peace.
Okay.
You can commit a genocide during a war. Okay, so if during a war you decide to start killing civilians and you start killing people indiscriminately, it doesn't matter. You can't use war as a cover.
So give me like 2 examples quickly of that happening.
Of a genocide happening.
Yeah.
Great. Holocaust is a great example, right?
Okay.
This is the reason why the law is written the way it's written, because if the Genocide Convention and genocide laws were written in a way that said genocide can only occur in peacetime, well, then the Holocaust wouldn't have been considered a genocide.
Yeah.
Most genocides occur during times of war. Why? Because that's when it's easy to cover these things up. In a time of peace, most people are not going to be wiping out entire populations. Now, obviously, China is the counterexample to this. It's a big enough territory that even in a time of peace, it can kill an entire ethnic group or sterilize an entire ethnic group or rape an entire ethnic group, and nobody's going to be able to do anything about it. But typically, it's in a time of war that countries do these things.
Okay.
And so that's why it doesn't matter if it's in a time of war. If you have the intent to destroy a people, either whole or in part,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be everybody. So it doesn't need to be that we're going to wipe out all the Palestinians. No, it just has to be, no, we're going to wipe out all the Palestinians that live in this part of Palestine. That's part of them, right? Or we're going to wipe out all the Palestinians who live in Gaza. That's more than enough to say that now you have intent. If you have stated that you want to kill these people, which a lot of the people I mentioned have. They have publicly made statements saying that we must kill all of these people. Not that we must kill all of Hamas. Not that we must kill all of the bad guys. We must kill all of these people. Members of the IDF, who are dual citizens, have said, we should kill the kids. We should kill the old people. We should kill everybody. We should rape them. We should kill. They say these things. So they've made the statement that indicates intent. The government of Israel had the opportunity to say, no, we disagree with all of these statements. We will prosecute these people because these individuals are genocidal. We're going to prosecute them internally.
Yeah.
Now, that would show that, okay, the Israeli government maybe doesn't believe in this and they're pushing back against it. But instead, they don't prosecute these people. They allow these people to run free. And then the people in Israel will protest, these extremists, right? They'll protest if these people ever get arrested. So that's where you've got the entire apparatus of intent. So now you say, okay, we've got intent.
Yeah.
You've got intent to destroy people. Now you have to take action toward that intent. Otherwise, it's just a bad intention. That alone would not be enough. So you need the second element. So the second element would be doing things to implement that intent. So it'd be killing members of that group, causing serious bodily injury to members of that group, causing the permanent impairment of the mental faculties of that group, subject the group to conditions of life that are intended to cause physical destruction of the group in whole or in part, imposes measures intended to prevent births, transfers by force the children of that group to another group. I'm telling you, man, at least 5 of these 6 things we've seen over and over again.
Yeah.
Right? Killing members of that group. Obviously, we're seeing that. And they've said they have the intent to kill everybody, kill old people, kill young people. They've killed almost 300,000 people. You know, the numbers that we get, you're not getting the real numbers. I used to see the real numbers. I can't tell you what the real numbers were.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, based on credible estimates from open source information, almost 300,000 people have been killed by the Israeli occupation forces. Just in the last year. Causing serious bodily injury. There's so many children that you've seen that are made.
Yeah.
There's more amputees in Gaza than anywhere else in the world at any time in the world. Permanent impairment in mental faculties, right? We've seen this too. We've seen videos of children who are going crazy because they have buildings falling down on their heads.
Yeah.
So all of these things are taking place. So we've got the intent, we've got the acts of genocide, and obviously they're preventing birth, they're preventing food. They're doing everything in their power to destroy these people. And obviously there's more detail, and we can go into it in a future conversation, but what is the bottom line that I'm trying to get to here? We have enough, more than enough, to open an investigation. So the DOJ should definitely have an investigation open. That is without a doubt. We have more than enough for an indictment, because for an indictment, you need probable cause.
Yeah.
Probable cause gets you to the point where you can have arrest warrants, you can start bringing people in for questioning, you can do interrogations. Do we have that? Yes, absolutely.
But the thing is, right, Fahad, is I read a story where there was a guy, to escape conviction, he went to live in Israel and got a dual citizenship there.
Yeah.
So even if we convicted these people, they're not coming back here.
Well, here's the thing. We can take these people back, right? So we do this all the time. I was part of operations where we had people who were part of terrorist organizations in foreign countries. What we do is we send our hostage rescue team over there to grab the guy, okay, put him on a plane, and then I would be on the receiving end, right? I would be in New York at an airport, and we'd have so-and-so terrorist showing up with a hood over his head, and we'd say, hey, what's up, buddy?
What if they say we have no jurisdiction in another country?
No, but that's this, the extraterritorial jurisdiction, that comes from this.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have the right to prosecute this wherever we want. Now, we might have other things in place, right? Maybe it would be a diplomatic issue.
Okay.
Right? Like maybe we say, okay, State Department says we shouldn't invade Israel. Okay, no problem. We won't do that. But the point is, by U.S. law, we have the right. Now it's a question whether there are other things to take into consideration before acting upon that right. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is we have leverage over Israel, right?
Yeah.
The Zionist entity gets most of its money from us. It would not exist without us.
Yeah.
So let's say we tell Israel to stop. Like that would be first one, right? Step one, right? Stop the genocide.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about, in another conversation, about how members of Congress are also covered under this statute, because it's not just about committing a genocide. It's also, it covers people who are abetting a genocide. And I'll talk briefly about that in a second. But because we have leverage over Israel, we could say, hey, look, you're not going to get any money from us until these 10 people are put on a plane and sent back to the United States for prosecution. And then we prosecute them. And that's how we would make sure justice is done. So that's piece one of it, right? The genociders, how do you punish those people? But then there's also the people that are, okay, so actually, what's the punishment for genocide? In a case where death results, the punishment is death or imprisonment for life, and a fine not more than $1 million or both.
You know, a different thing. I was told by classmates growing up, and this is crazy. And this is, again, our tax dollars, is that if I was Jewish, I can go to Israel and get dual citizenship there. Then my school would be free, my medical would be free, and my board would be free, which blows my mind.
Where? In Israel?
In Israel, yeah.
But you could do that in other countries too, right? So dual citizenship in general,
Yeah.
I think it's a weird concept.
But we
right?
pay for that, though. The U.S. citizen, correct?
Well, not really. I mean, because I guess through aid, indirectly, right? But
Yeah.
that part of the dual citizenship, it's a problem, right? But that's not what I focus on, right? When I talk about dual citizenship and I have an issue with it,
Yeah.
it's when there's people with dual citizenship that have government positions in the United States, lobbying in the United States, or have national security positions in the United States. Because there are more more Israeli dual citizens
Okay.
with top secret compartmented clearances than there are Black Americans. That's right, right?
That's a lot. That's a lot. Interesting.
Tell me that isn't a crazy thing. But anyway.
So what if they were like, for example, if they were Chinese dual citizens?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a problem. Dual citizenship is an issue because China would be an issue because it's on the list of 5 or 6 countries that has special restrictions. But generally, you could be a dual citizen of almost any country and still have national security positions.
What if
Israel is overrepresented?
Yeah.
Right. But in general, we should have a law that prohibits anyone with dual nationality from a national security position. This should be very clear. I know people who have worked for the Israeli government who are now they hold top secret compartmented clearances and they work on Israel-related issues. How is that not a conflict, right? This is a product of your government being captured by a foreign lobby, right? That is a whole different issue. But just on the topic of the genocide, right? There's another piece of this that applies to people in the U.S. who are members of Congress, who are in politics, right? There's the incitement offense. So anyone that's directly or publicly inciting others to commit a genocide is also covered under this, and they can be imprisoned for 5 years or get a fine of $500,000. That sounds like nothing to me, but that's good enough, right?
That's good enough.
Start with that.
Something, yeah.
And then attempt and conspiracy is also something that's covered under this offense. And if you attempt it or you conspired to do it, this means assisting in it, you are also going to be culpable of the crime the same way as the person committing the crime.
Well, you know, Fahad, and I've learned it this year going through some legal matters of my own here in Central Jersey with a business that I have, is that Jamie Foxx said it perfect in that movie, Law Abiding Citizen with Gerald Butler. He said, it's not what's true. I hope I'm not butchering it. It's not what's true, but it's what you can prove in court.
Yep, 100%. And that's the whole point of what I'm talking about here, right? I'm not talking about what's true. There's a lot of things that are true that I could have mentioned. I'm talking about the things where we've got direct evidence. These are all the things I mentioned are things of which there is direct documented evidence that is undisputed, meaning some of these statements by the members of the Israeli government, undisputed that these were made. Some of the things that are taking place on the ground in the Palestinian territories, undisputed. We have our own evidence, meaning the United States government has its own evidence. Some of that might be classified evidence. That doesn't matter. It's still considered evidence. You can still bring it to a court. It would just be done in a sealed proceeding. That's all. The general public would not see that evidence. That's all. But anyway, the evidence exists. And I'm saying even with just public sources, you've got more than enough evidence. To first, right? Do you have enough evidence to start an investigation? Yes, I think we all agree on that. So that's step one. Once you start the investigation, then it's a question of, do you have enough probable cause to issue an arrest warrant? And again, based on some of the things I mentioned, and because these things are available publicly, like you don't have to go far. You can go to UN.gov, the UN website. You can go to the US government website. You can go to mainstream news sources, and all of these things will be there. There will be documented evidence. And then again, like I said, there's going to be other evidence that you can't see. So then once you have probable cause, then you can start collecting better evidence. Because the thing about the court piece of this, that comes last. The first question is, do we have enough to start an investigation? We said yes. Okay, and then when you have an investigation, you collect more evidence. That evidence will include interviews. So you're going to talk to people who were there on the ground committing this genocide. And some of them are going to feel bad about it, and they're going to tell you what actually happened. Some of them are just going to be honest people and they won't feel bad about it, but they're still going to tell you what happened. And then some of the victims who survived are going to tell you what happened. Now that is the sort of evidence that you're going to take into a courtroom, and you're going to have people testifying to the facts, because the other stuff we have is general evidence. What we would need is specific instances from those interviews. And so my point is, you have to start an investigation. And from that investigation, you have to collect some of these other pieces of evidence. And then using that evidence is when you get to that point you're talking about, where you prove something in a court of law.
Now, Fahad, this whole interview and conversation has been very educational for me, and hopefully for the listeners and the viewers too. I want to leave with one last thing. How can this be started? How can we get the ball rolling to catch the people who's doing bad things and start everything from there?
Sorry, I think we're going to have one of our friends join.
Oh, yeah?
Let's see if he joins.
From Instagram Live?
Yeah, for Instagram Live. All right. I'll see if it works. And it's not working right now, but
like, how do we get the ball rolling? How do we start? Because, this is all great. It's anticipating, but the problem is how come no one started?
Happens. Yeah. So the issue is your government's been captured, right? Like, honestly, we go through these heavy topics, and we got to be serious and all that. But really, like, it's a joke. Like, this is a circus, right? We have been completely and totally captured by foreign interest and corporate interest, right? And both of those are bad things. But when they work together in tandem, it's a very, very bad thing, right? It means that you, as an individual citizen, have no authority over what goes on in your government with your tax dollars. I was seeing who was joining. And because of that, things don't get better. How do you fix that, right? That's the first step. You got to figure out, okay, well, what do we do? What do we do? Like, you're frustrated.
Yeah.
Very simple. Go vote, right? Everyone thinks this is simplistic, right? And everyone's got this defeatist mindset. It's like, oh, if everything's captured by so-and-so and so-and-so, why should I vote? Well, because fools, listen to me. And this is everyone, right? There's 70% of the American public does not vote most of the time.
Wow.
Okay? So 70% of eligible voters, fools. Go vote. If you're tired of your government being captured by foreign lobbies and by corporate lobbies, register to vote and go vote. If you haven't voted yet, shut up and go. Like, seriously, just shut up and sit down for a while. Don't raise your voice. Don't bother me with your activism. Don't bother me with your yard signs. None of that matters. If you don't have the energy to just stand up and submit a piece of paper, stand in line for an hour max, 20 minutes most of the time, you're not serious about this. You don't care about this government. And that's why these people who do care and are willing to put billions of dollars into their agenda, that's why they capture the government. But if you want your government back, it's very simple. Every person in my district registered to vote, and went out to vote, and voted for me, I would win in a landslide. And I'm not taking any corporate money. I'm not taking any foreign money. In fact, I'm fighting to get rid of corporate and foreign money and corporate donations entirely in our election process. So vote for people who are against putting money into politics. That's step one. And then vote for people who represent you and the American interest on issues of significance. If somebody cares more about foreign governments and what foreign governments care about than your own situation at home, then don't vote for them. Vote for somebody else. Don't be a defeatist. Don't think that just because there's a two-party system that somebody else can't have an impact and that somebody else can't get elected. Like I said, if earlier on in this election cycle, more people had gotten registered to vote and we had raised just a little bit more money, I might have won this election. That would be a very different outcome. And that would have laid the groundwork for other people in New Jersey and around the country to do the same thing, because then you've got a recipe for success. But it takes everybody getting involved and everyone buying into the vision. And so in order to have a counter narrative to this narrative of corporate and foreign lobbies controlling us, we need to start laying the groundwork. And you do that by registering to vote, by getting involved in campaigns, by donating to campaigns, and then by going out and voting, and by telling your friends to vote, and by telling your family to vote.
Well, Fahad, thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to sit down and go over these not controversial but important topics, so that way you can educate people who can understand where their tax dollars is going and what's actually been going on right now around the world. And hopefully we can try and find peace, because the main goal in everything is peace, not war. But unfortunately, war makes money more than peace.
Yeah.
But to work on what Fahad said, please go vote, guys. Early voting makes, I didn't even know this. I knew you can early vote, but now I'm going to go to Bridgewater Municipal Building after this and go and vote. I used to think that, oh, my vote doesn't really count, majority, electoral college, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, good or bad, at least you have the right to vote, and it could mean something down the line, whether a president wins from the popular vote or not. I know it's very, very intricate in the end, but at least you can walk away thinking you casted a vote, and hopefully you would do something. It's like that Larry David, what was it, episode where he didn't go and vote because he didn't think he was going to win, and then the person in his district won by like one vote.
Hey, let me make a quick comment on this because I know we're about to close, but it's not just about presidential elections. The elections that matter most are the ones that you don't care about, meaning your local elections and congressional elections and Senate elections and gubernatorial elections. All of these matter a lot more because the president can't do anything without Congress. And so if you, in the district that you live in, get involved in elections and make sure you vote and get bad people out of Congress, you're going to have a much bigger impact than if you just focus on presidential politics. And so that's another important lesson to walk away with for everybody. It's that the stuff that seems unexciting is often the most important, and that's the building block for future success. Because if you don't have congressmen and senators that believe what you believe, you're never going to get a president, right? Most people don't go from being a TV show guy to being president, right? There's one exception to that.
Yeah, that's a anomaly, which is insane. Yeah. But hey, I mean, he did it, so more power to him for destroying the odds like that, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, folks, thanks for tuning in and listening, and I hope we didn't offend anyone. Fahad was just stating facts, and if you believe that he was wrong by any means, I mean, you can just open a discussion with him or be cordial and talk to him about it. He's running, and hopefully in the next election, you'll be running again as well.
We'll see about that, but let me comment on the offending people. If somebody supports genocide,
well, that's different.
My intention is to offend them. If they have that worldview, come see me.
Yeah.
I'm a tough guy. I will handle your worldview face to face.
Yeah. Fahad is very good at having a conversation face to face because
it wouldn't be a conversation at that point. Let me tell you.
I mean, in the end, no one supports genocide. No one supports killing. In all religions, we support peace and harmony. Unfortunately, like Fahad said, with money and power and corporate interests and everything, it just turns very bad. But yeah, I hope everyone got something out of this and learned something. And if you don't agree with him, just look online, do your own research. Make sure it's not a one-sided thing. But history usually doesn't lie when it comes to massacres or anything like that. Like Googling the Nakba, for example.
Yeah.
So, but we'll hear you guys in the next one. And hopefully we'll have you again on here, Fahad, for another chat. And, I mean, who knows? Maybe after this you might win. You never know.
That'd be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool. Yeah. But thanks, guys. We'll talk to you in the next one, and we'll see you again. Take care.